Adaobi had always been a cautious woman. Growing up in the heart of Enugu, she learned from her mother that life, while beautiful, often wore a deceptive mask. Yet, when she met Obinna, her walls began to crumble. He was everything she had prayed for: charming, successful, and respectful of her deeply rooted Christian faith. In just a year, their whirlwind romance led to a proposal, and Adaobi had never felt surer about anything in her life. Their traditional marriage was a grand celebration, as was expected in the Eastern Igbo culture. Friends and family gathered to celebrate the union, dancing to the rhythm of the ojin and Anuli music. Obinna's wealth was evident in the lavish decorations, the expensive wine he provided, and the endless supply of gifts for Adaobi's family. To Adaobi, it seemed like she had stepped into a fairy tale. But even fairy tales have their shadows. The evening of their white wedding was magical. The reception hall was adorned with fresh roses, and Adaobi's wedding gown sparkled under the golden chandeliers. Obinna's speech about love and commitment drew tears from many, including Adaobi's mother, who had always been skeptical of men who appeared too perfect. As the night drew to an end, the couple headed to Obinna's family home, where they would spend their first night together as husband and wife. The mansion was enormous, secluded in the outskirts of Nsukka, surrounded by towering palm trees that swayed under the moonlight. It was Adaobi's first time in the house, as Obinna had always insisted they meet elsewhere during their courtship. She had found it odd but dismissed her concerns as she marveled at the opulence around her. "Welcome home, my love," Obinna whispered as he guided her into the grand living room. His voice, usually warm, had a strange edge to it. She glanced at him but saw only his familiar smile. Perhaps it was her nerves, she thought. After all, this was her wedding night. As they walked upstairs to the master bedroom, Adaobi noticed something peculiar. The house, despite its grandeur, lacked the warmth of a lived-in home. There were no personal photographs on the walls, no clutter that hinted at everyday life. Even the air smelled sterile, as if the house had been uninhabited for a long time. "Obinna, does anyone else live here?" she asked, her voice tentative. "No, just us," he replied quickly. Too quickly. The bedroom was equally luxurious, with a massive four-poster bed draped in silk sheets. A large wardrobe stood against one wall, and a door to the left led to an ensuite bathroom. Obinna's demeanor changed as he locked the door behind them. His smile faded, replaced by an unsettling intensity. "Ada, my queen," he began, taking her hands in his. "There is something I need to tell you." Her heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've always said you would do anything for me," he said, his eyes boring into hers. "Tonight, I need you to prove it." Adaobi frowned. "Prove what?" "Obinna, you're scaring me." Before she could pull away, he tightened his grip on her hands. "Do you trust me?" She hesitated. "Of course, but..." "No buts," he interrupted. "You're my wife now. We are bound by love and destiny. Tonight, we must seal that bond in a special way." He let go of her hands and walked to the wardrobe. Adaobi watched as he opened it, revealing a collection of items that made her stomach churn. There were candles, strange carvings, and bottles filled with unidentified substances. At the center was a small wooden stool stained with something dark and ominous. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice rising. "Obinna, what are you doing?" He turned to her, his expression devoid of the warmth she had come to love. "Ada, you're my chosen one. To solidify our future, our wealth, our power, we must make a sacrifice." Her blood ran cold. "Sacrifice," she repeated, her voice trembling. "It's the only way," he said, stepping closer. "You don't understand now, but you will. Trust me, my love. This will secure our legacy forever." Adaobi backed away, shaking her head. "No, No, Obinna, this is wrong. I can't. I won't. His face darkened, and for the first time, she saw a side of him that terrified her. You don't have a choice, Ada. You belong to me now. She turned and bolted for the door, but he was faster. He grabbed her by the arm and threw her onto the bed. She screamed, kicking and flailing, but he overpowered her. Tears streamed down her face as she begged him to stop. You'll thank me later, he muttered, lighting the candles with a trembling hand. Desperation fueled Adaobi's strength. As he turned his back to retrieve another item from the wardrobe, she grabbed a glass vase from the bedside table and smashed it against his head. Obinna staggered, clutching his bleeding scalp, and she took the opportunity to run. The house was a labyrinth, but adrenaline guided her steps. She could hear him behind her, his voice a mix of anger and pleading. Ada. Come back. You're making a mistake. Ignoring him, she found the front door and yanked it open. The night air hit her face as she sprinted barefoot into the darkness, her wedding gown snagging on branches and tearing as she ran. She didn't stop until she reached a small village. Bursting into the compound of an elderly woman, she collapsed, gasping for breath. The woman and her family gathered around her, alarmed by her disheveled state and incoherent rumblings. He tried to kill me, she managed to say between sobs. My husband is a ritualist. The villagers acted swiftly. The men armed themselves and followed her back to the mansion, while the women stayed behind to console her. When they arrived, the house was empty. Obinna had fled, leaving behind the macabre items in the wardrobe as evidence of his intentions. Adaobi returned to her family in Enugu, her heart shattered but her spirit unbroken. The news spread quickly, and Obinna's reputation was ruined. Despite efforts to locate him, he disappeared without a trace. Months later, Adaobi sat in her mother's living room, reflecting on the events that had nearly cost her life. She had ignored the subtle red flags, blinded by love and the allure of Obinna's perfection. But she had learned a valuable lesson, one that would guide her for the rest of her life. She vowed never to let her guard down again. And as she looked out the window at the setting sun, she whispered a prayer of gratitude for the second chance she had been given.